This is Nightly Business Report with Tyler Matheson and Susie Garrett. Brought to you by...
Sailing through the heart of historic cities and landscapes on a river, you get close to iconic landmarks, to local life, to cultural treasures. Viking River Cruises, exploring the world in comfort.
In the fast lane, auto sales sizzle. Demand for trucks and crossovers soar as buyers race into showrooms. But prices are rising as well to record levels. Will that slam the brakes on the buying frenzy?
Powerhouse, America's oil boom is so powerful that a new study out today says it will actually boost the income of American households and create millions of jobs. But how and by how much?
Get smart. The battle over your wrist has begun. Samsung and Qualcomm taking the first swing, beating Apple to the punch. But with big firms investing big money in smartwatches, what's at stake if consumers just don't buy in? All that and more tonight on Nightly Business Report for Wednesday, September 4th. Good evening, everybody. I'm Sue Herrera, in for Tyler Matheson.
And I'm Susie Garrett. Good evening, everyone. On Wall Street today, a red-hot rally for the blue chips. The Dow posted its biggest gain in more than a month, even though investors are still on edge about a possible military strike against Syria. They were encouraged to buy stocks thanks to robust sales of cars and trucks in August. The major stock averages rallied as automakers posted their strongest month since the government's Cash for Clunkers incentive program back at the height of the financial crisis. Here are the closing digits. The Dow jumped about 97 points. The Nasdaq rose 36. That was on the strength of tech stocks. And the S&P added 13 points.
And now to break down those August sales figures for Detroit's Big Three. General Motors sales rose nearly 15%. That easily beat expectations. Ford sales rose more than 12% from the same month last year, its best August in 7 years. And Chrysler had its best August in 6 years, with sales up by 11.5%, led by strong demand for its Ram pickup trucks. With a closer look behind those numbers, we turn to Phil LeBeau in Chicago with more. Hi, Phil.
Hi, Sue. Really, three things were driving better than expected sales last month. Let's start first off by giving the official number for August, 16.09 million. That was the sales pace for the month of August. That is the strongest monthly auto sales since November of 2007. So we are in a territory that we haven't seen in 6 years. And one reason why is that auto sales last month were helped by a strong Labor Day weekend. Those were actually lumped in with all of August, so that's why you had stronger than expected numbers in part. Another reason, the people going into dealerships. They were buying in part because of low interest loans, leases. Those are attracting buyers. Right now, it's not uncommon to get 0% financing for loans and leases. The average transaction price topped $31,000. That is close to an all-time record high. And when you look at that, you might be saying, well, who's buying right now? Well, in part, when you look at the pickup truck market, it's the contractors, small business owners. They continue to replenish their fleets by buying new trucks. Large pickup sales up 19.3% in August, better than the overall sales pace for the industry. And here's a stat I love. Ford sold one F-Series pickup every 42 seconds last month. Not surprisingly, as it is almost every month, the F-Series was the top-selling vehicle, followed by the Camry, the Silverado, and the Civic. And Susie and Sue, one last statistic for you. Last month, the Big Three sold 44.1% of the vehicles in the United States. Asian automakers sold 47.8%. So the Asian automakers have passed the Big Three, at least in the month of August.
You know, Phil, you mentioned those interest rates that are so attractive right now, but rates are starting to rise. Do you expect that that is going to slow the pace of sales?
Not for a while. They're going to have to go up dramatically, Sue, because the captive finance organizations for all of the automakers, they're intent on keeping those rates as low as possible. Now, inevitably, as rates move higher, that's going to have some impact on auto loan rates as well as lease rates. But for the foreseeable future, they're expected to stay low.
You know, Phil, you mentioned in your report that the average car price is now $31,000. So given all the demand that's going on, will the prices go up even higher?
I think so. I think you're going to see it go up for two reasons. One, people are putting more content in their vehicles, so they're willing to say, you know what, if I'm going to pay for this over the next 6 or 7 years, I'm going to put more content in it, and that's pushing the price up higher. And at the same time, the automakers are in the sweet spot right now, Susie. they can increase production as they want to. They are not forced to increase production, and as a result, you've got a tight supply, and that's allowing dealers to push prices higher.
Well, at least it's a good sign that we have such robust sales going on. Phil, thank you so much. That's Phil LeBeau reporting from Chicago. To Washington now, the Senate Foreign Relations Committee voted today to approve a resolution authorizing a limited military strike against Syria. The resolution, which passed by a 10-7 vote, sets a 60-day limit on any U.S. military engagement in Syria and bars the deployment of any troops on the ground for combat duty. This also sets the stage for a debate and another vote by the full Senate next week. That's when lawmakers return from their 5-week summer break.
President Obama was in Sweden today meeting with Scandinavian leaders ahead of that G20 economic summit that starts Thursday in St. Petersburg, Russia. As Secretary of State John Kerry continued to make the case to U.S. lawmakers to back a U.S.-led strike against Syria, the president tried to shift the onus for military action away from the U.S. and onto world leaders everywhere.
In the face of such barbarism, the international community cannot be silent, and that failing to respond to this attack would only increase the risk of more attacks, and the possibility that other countries would use these weapons as well.
As the president tries to drum up support from the international community and Congress debates authorizing military action, Americans in the nation's heartland have their own opinions about U.S. involvement in Syria. In Oklahoma, many people express strong views about the U.S. getting involved in Syria's civil war. John Harwood joins us now from Midwest City, Oklahoma, where he asked residents there how they feel about the Syrian crisis. I know you have a lot of good stories to tell us, John.
Susie, lots of conflicting pressures on lawmakers as they return next week on Syria and on budget and financial issues as well. We got a taste of them here in Oklahoma's 4th District. Congressman Tom Cole, the Republican representative, went to Tinker Air Force Base, a massive facility here, and heard that the base had been hurt by budget sequester and furloughs. They simply can't afford the shutdown that some Republicans have threatened.
I don't know what you would do on the flying operations and how that would operate, especially if, you know, with the missions that they have to do, the nuclear mission that the Navy is responsible for on a day-to-day basis, the counter-drug, counter-operations that you have along with the North American defense. I'm not sure how you do that in a total shutdown.
Come to my town hall tonight.
And indeed, at that town hall tonight, very feisty conservatives said a shutdown is exactly what we need as a tool to get rid of Obamacare.
The Republicans have got to wake up and get tough. You say, well, I don't think this will fly and that won't fly and we can't shut the government down. Let the government shut down if that's what they want to do. Let Obama be guilty.
And of course, on Syria, you had speaker after speaker questioning the president's constitutional authority to act on his own and demanding that Congress not give him that authority.
Where does he get this? You know, out of a Cracker Jack box or what? It's not in the Constitution. Just because the president made a statement that he should not have made should not bind the Congress to go ahead and approve it.
Now, on that issue, Syria, Congressman Cole sides with the right in his district. He is leaning against voting to give authority, but he does want to see a deal on budget and financial issues to spare Tinker Air Force Base and avoid a financial crisis this fall, guys.
So, John, what exactly did the congressman say about how he's going to vote on Syria? And also, what did he say about President Obama? Is he going to win support for military action?
He's leaning strongly against. He said he's going to listen to arguments over the next week, but he's going to be a very, very hard sell for the administration. He says he does think the president has a good chance of winning this vote. House Speaker Boehner, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, both influential among Republicans, have come out in support of the president. That is a sign that he may be building some momentum in the House, but it's not a sure thing.
Yeah, John, how close is this vote going to be? Because we've heard from both sides of the aisle, and a number of Democrats are saying that they're going to vote no. A couple of Republicans say they're going to vote yes. So how tight is it going to be?
I think it will be very tight in the House, less so in the Senate, Democratic-controlled Senate. It moved out of the Foreign Relations Committee today, but I do think that in the House it's going to be a nail-biter that will require a very large Democratic vote to go with a minority of Republican votes. Congressman Cole predicted that most Republicans would not vote with the Speaker and with the President.
John Harwood. John, thank you so much. And while Syria remains the biggest worry for Washington and, of course, for Wall Street, the debate rages on about whether it's time for the nation's central bank to begin easing back on its stimulus plans. One top Fed official thinks that that time is very near. John Williams, the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco, says the U.S. economy has nearly enough momentum right now without the need for any additional monetary stimulus from the Fed. In a speech today in Oregon, Williams said he has an open mind about tapering, but did not offer any specific timetable for a possible pullback by the central bank.
And more from the central bank. Meanwhile, the latest Federal Reserve Beige Book survey of economic conditions around the nation lived up to its name today. There wasn't a whole lot that was new or unexpected in the Fed's latest region-by-region breakdown on the economy. The Fed reports, quote, modest to moderate growth across most regions of the U.S. over the past 6 weeks or so, as consumer spending, manufacturing, and real estate activity all increased. But some Wall Street observers think this may be just enough for the central bank to again consider when to begin tapering back its bond-buying stimulus measures.
Mortgage applications rose last week for the first time in a month, rising more than 1%. That's after a slight dip in lending rates, falling from their highest levels so far this year for the week before, and a pickup in refinancing. The Mortgage Bankers Association said that borrowing costs have climbed by more than a full percentage point since late May.
The U.S. is getting more competitive. The World Economic Forum says that U.S. competitiveness among global economies is rising again after 4 years of decline. The U.S., still the world's largest economy, is now ranked in 5th place for overall competitiveness. That's up from 7th last year.
Well, the NASDAQ may not have felt very competitive for a short time today. The all-electronic exchange suffered a 6-minute outage today in processing quotes and orders, but just for a small number of stocks. But the NASDAQ says trading was not interrupted, and in a note sent to traders, they blamed a computer failure. A backup system successfully kicked in and the problem was resolved. Today's issue was not related to that massive outage on August 22nd, when trading on all stocks was halted for 3 hours due to a trading software glitch.
Still ahead on the program, America is awash in energy. But does the oil and gas boom help your finances? A new study says yes. That's coming up, but first, here's a look at how the international markets closed today. Did the S&P really commit fraud, or is a new $5 billion lawsuit that it's facing retaliation? Standard & Poor's, the ratings agency owned by McGraw-Hill, is facing a fraud lawsuit filed by the Justice Department. The suit alleges that S&P misled banks and credit unions about the credibility of its ratings on mortgage-backed securities just ahead of the 2008 financial crisis. But S&P says the suit is just, quote, retaliation for being the only major credit rating agency to take away the U.S.'s sterling AAA rating during the recession. That's when the Treasury hit its debt ceiling and Congress failed to reach a federal budget.
Another fine for America's largest bank. J.P. Morgan Chase has agreed to pay $18.3 million to settle a class action lawsuit claiming it made inadequate disclosure about the resetting of interest rates on adjustable rate mortgages that it was currently selling.
A big blow for Boeing today. Delta Airlines announced plans to buy 40 new passenger jets worth about $5.5 billion from Airbus. It's the European plane maker's first order from Delta in 2 decades. The first batch of brand new A330s will arrive in 2015. The rest of Delta's order, the smaller A321 jets, which are being phased out, are due in 2016.
Toyota is recalling 369,000 vehicles worldwide. Its high-end hybrid SUVs may stop running if a hybrid engine system alarm goes off. And its luxury Lexus sedans could stall out because of a loose engine bolt. A company spokesman says no accidents related to either problem have been reported.
We begin our market focus tonight with a retailer that's having a rough day. Shares of Francesca's, which sells women's apparel and accessories, fell sharply after the company reported weaker than expected earnings and said sales would continue to decline. It's the latest retailer to take a hit from cautious spending as more consumers forego impulse items like shoes and dresses and focus instead on buying houses and cars. The stock fell almost 26% to $17.79. A different story, though, for Sienna. This network equipment maker reporting a narrower than expected loss and forecasting strong revenue growth for the current quarter. The company's benefiting from a recovery in spending by telecom carriers, which are upgrading their wireless and wireline networks. That's creating big demand for network gear. The stock soaring almost 14% to $23.54, and that's also a good trend news for Sienna's rivals. Juniper and JDS Uniphase also rose today. Shares of Navistar sputtering today. The engine maker reported its fourth straight quarterly loss and says it'll cut 500 jobs. Navistar says its core truck business was hurt by a failed redesign and lower industry demand. The stock fell more than 2% to $33 and change.
Dollar General's earnings beat expectations. The value retailer attracted customers into its stores by selling more groceries and brand name products. The company also reported sales growth that exceeded its competitors. The results warn that frugal shoppers, however, are making it difficult to raise prices. At the close, the stock was up almost 5% to $56.39. And shares of data storage makers Micron Tech and SanDisk rallied on heavy volume following news of a fire at a rival chip maker's plant. That rival, Hynix, was forced to suspend operations at its factory in China. But after an initial assessment, Hynix said it expects to resume production shortly. Shares of Micron Tech rose 5% to $14.75, and SanDisk gained 3% to $57.14. And Green Mountain isn't just about brewing coffee anymore. It's also getting into soup. Campbell's Soup will sell K-Cups for Green Mountain's Keurig machines that will brew a cup of chicken broth. The K-Cups will come with packets of dried noodles and vegetables that you can mix right in. The partnership marks Green Mountain's first attempt to expand beyond beverages. The stock rose about 1% to $86.30, while Campbell saw a fractional gain to $42.92.
American family piggy banks are bulging a little bit more these days. A new study out today says that thanks to the oil and gas boom and lower energy prices, household incomes are up by $1,200. And according to IHS, that conducted the study for the energy industry, the fracking boom, will boost household incomes by as much as $2,000 by the year 2015 and create more than 3 million jobs throughout the economy over the next 5 years. Joining us now to talk more about this is John Larson. He's co-author of the study and vice president of economics at IHS. John, thanks for joining us. And, you know, this is great news to hear. We've certainly all benefited from lower prices. But as you look out and you're making your forecast out to the year 2020, how much of your assumptions are based on lower energy prices? It might not work out that way, right?
Well, I think you're right. There's an important story that has to be told about where those energy prices will go. And when you look at the supply side of the equation, the rapid growth in this unconventional technology has really unlocked a tremendous amount of resource base, and you've seen tremendous growth in both oil and natural gas production. And so we feel very confident about that underlying assessment of where that supply will go and where the corresponding price paths will be. There's a tremendous wealth of availability of natural gas in this country at a dollar price of around $4 to $5 MMBTU. So I think when you look at it relative to the global prices, and that's the key, that's what determines the break-even economics for the underlying plays that are allowing us to enjoy this energy renaissance and corresponding economic growth. You do see an opportunity there for this to continue into 2025 and beyond, actually.
You know, John, as Susie mentioned, that's good news for all of America, certainly. But your numbers seem a little bit higher than some of the other studies that are out there. Is that because you based it on something different, or your metrics were different than other numbers? Why?
Well, it's important when you look at this industry, you have to understand the full breadth of the industry. It's a supply chain from the wellhead all the way down to the consumer and the supply network that supports and enables this activity to take place. And so we're looking at not just the roughneck that's working the wellhead, we're looking at the steel furnace in Pittsburgh that's fabricating the steel and the pipe fitters and drill bit manufacturers in Ohio. And so we're trying to capture that full supply chain and then look at the broader macroeconomic effects that are leading, as you said, to this income effect for consumers. And I think that's the real highlight here is how profound this income effect is for all consumers. And obviously, when more consumers have more money in their wallets, they step back into the economy and purchase more goods and services, which in turn spurs greater economic growth. So I don't think we're overstating this at all. I think it's been a profound effect, and it's going to continue to have a profound effect going forward as that income grows for all individuals in this economy.
And part of this whole energy boom is because of fracking. And you mentioned the word fracking, and people right away say, and what about the environment? I mean, to what extent will environmental concerns or restrictions going forward impact savings, household savings?
Well, obviously, you have to look at the current set of rules and regulations. Our study was based on an assumption of the status quo of those current regulatory frameworks that are conducted at the state level. And there's a whole host of permitting and other regulatory procedures in place. This is an industry that requires a significant amount of activity. You have to go out and explore, do the seismic activity to identify new plays, and then conduct all the underlying drilling. And so if that activity was curtailed, it does fairly quickly have knock-on effects down through the economy and could risk pulling that money back out of the pocketbooks of Americans.
And John, real quickly, who funded this study?
The study was funded by a coalition of organizations from the American Chemistry Council, the National Association of Manufacturers, the Fertilizer Institute. Organizations along those types of natures have helped contribute to sponsoring the activity of the analysis that we've conducted.
All right, well, it's a fascinating study. Thank you so much for coming on the program to tell us about it. John Larson with IHS. Sue?
Coming up, two major companies are kickstarting a whole new category of electronics, smartwatches, and some are calling it the most important new product since the launch of the iPad. But first, a look at how commodities, treasuries, and currencies performed today.
It's one of the biggest gifts ever given to a college. New York real estate mogul Stephen Ross, who's also the owner of the Miami Dolphins, is donating $200 million to his alma mater. It's the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The money will be split between the Stephen M. Ross School of Business and the school's athletic department. This latest gift raises Ross's total donations to the university to more than $300 million.
Well, this sounds like something out of those old Dick Tracy comics, but the smartwatch from Samsung is a wearable tech device, and it's now a reality. Seema Modi was there for the unveiling in New York City today, and she has more on the latest gadget you thought you didn't need.
Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Samsung Galaxy Gear.
The battle for your wrist has begun.
Welcome to the future.
Samsung and Qualcomm both announcing to the world the smartwatch has arrived. They are the first serious entrants into what's expected to be a huge market for the tech industry. Analysts at Canalys write that the smartwatch is the most important product category to watch in the consumer electronics space. And some of the big tech names are taking notice. Sony, Microsoft, Apple, and Google all are said to be working on their own version of a smartwatch device. Gartner expects that 5 to 10 million smartwatches may ship this year if Samsung and others get it right. And the trend towards wearable tech looks like it's here to stay.
I think it's a great idea.
You can carry it around wherever you go. With every outfit it can go. As long as it looks cute.
Google made shockwaves when it introduced Google Glass last year.
Once they get a little more slim, I think more people will be interested in it. But right now it really kind of stands out and is divisive. Some people love it, some people are like, I'm not ever wearing that thing.
But some recent data suggests the time for wearable devices to really take off with consumers could be closer at hand, literally. A survey conducted by Forrester found that when consumers were asked where they would want to wear a device, 29% said clipped to clothing, 28% opted for wrist, while only 12% said glass. But with today's announcement, Samsung delivered a clear message to its biggest rival, Apple. The battle for consumers is going to get a lot more fierce in the months to come. For Nightly Business Report, I'm Seema Modi in New York.
And Samsung might have more innovations to talk about in a few more weeks. It's scheduled a strategic conference in Seoul, South Korea for November 6th for investors and analysts. And the topic, the future of smartphones. Also on the agenda, Samsung's long-term growth strategy.
But not to be undone, Apple's Samsung's biggest rival, of course, for phone sales. It has a big week ahead of it. The company already announced an event next Tuesday, September 10th, at its Cupertino, California headquarters. The next day, September 11th, Apple will host an event in Beijing, where it's expected to announce a deal with China Mobile, that nation's biggest wireless carrier, to finally begin selling the iPhone there.
And finally tonight, a new building going up in London's financial district is being called a skyscraper, and with good reason. The 37-story glass-enclosed curved structure is reflecting so much sunlight that it's literally melting cars. It actually melted parts of a Jaguar parked outside the building last week. The building's developer has apologized and has offered to pay for the repairs. And Sue, people in Las Vegas should pay attention. Apparently, the same architect is building a building there, and it's a lot sunnier.
Oh, yeah.
It's a lot hotter.
Can you
a lot
imagine
more melting.
Calling home, honey, the car's melted?
The car's melted.
I can't even imagine that.
Especially a Jaguar.
Especially a Jag, exactly. Wow.
That's Nightly Business Report for tonight. I'm Susie Garrett. For more business stories, log on to our website, nbr.com.
And I'm Sue Herrera. Have a great evening, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Nightly Business Report has been brought to you by
Sailing through the heart of historic cities and landscapes on a river, you get close to iconic landmarks, to local life, to cultural treasures. Viking River Cruises, exploring the world in comfort.
I'm Susie Garrett with a Nightly Business Report news brief. The Dow posted its biggest gain in more than a month on robust auto sales in August. GM, Ford, and Chrysler all saw double-digit gains. On Wall Street today, the Dow jumped 97 points, the Nasdaq rose 36 on the strength of tech stocks, and the S&P added 13 points. A Senate committee voted to approve a limited military strike against Syria. It now heads to the full Senate. The Federal Reserve reports modest to moderate growth across the country over the past 2 months. Mortgage applications rose slightly last week, just as interest rates declined from their multi-year highs. And Samsung unveiled the world's first smartwatch today. It's a phone you wear on your wrist. Be sure to tune into Nightly Business Report right here on your public television station.